Hey guys, this is Swan Productions, aka number 4673. This is Cupid demo, and I'm just gonna continue. This is chapter 2. It's funny, is it not? They always leave you. Such is the way of the world. The more you love, the more you lose. They seem like they'll stay forever, but they never do. I'm the only one that stays, my lovely rose. My love is the only love you need. You were always so weak, always so loving to people who did not deserve it. Didn't I tell you to be wary? I knew it from the start, my rose. Catherine was a curse. She drove you to a love I have warned you about. I told you to rid of her, didn't I? I told you she would just cause you pain. But now she killed herself. Your sacrifice lost in her selfish ways. I was worried about you, darling. She almost led you astray, away from me. Trust in Mother, darling. I'm just glad to have you back to myself. Your silence bothers me, child. She was important to me, Mother. I loved her. Mother only laughed, and Rosa screamed out her pain. Rosa felt strong arms shake her awake. Rosa. She opened her eyes and was hit by a strange sadness that crushed her. She was dazed for a moment. Why was she so sad? And then she remembered. Her best friend is gone. She was gone. Rosa, how are you feeling? Guillaume sat by her bed, hand in hers. Rosa didn't realize she'd been holding on to it tightly in her fitful sleep. When she did, she broke from his grasp and clutched her knees instead. Rosa. She remained silent. I came to check on you. You went into shock and lost consciousness. I can only imagine how hard it must have been for you to see her like that. His words droned in her brain. Not much of them registered to her. Rosa did not speak, and Guillaume fidgeted with his glove. The wake will take place as soon as possible, Rosa. I just wanted you to let you know that she's being taken care of. He's hiding something. There was a slight triumph in Mother's voice. He wants to get rid of her body as soon as possible. Don't you see it, child? Tell me you're not falling for this. Rosa was tired. Mother, always the paranoid, would say such things. She'd hated anyone who came close to Rosa's heart. She didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to deal with anything right now. All she wanted was to wallow in her loneliness. To curl up inside the hole Catherine left behind and sleep. My child, tell me you see it. Remember the fear in Catherine's eyes on her last night. Look how undisturbed by Catherine's he is. I don't know. I just hate this mother dude. You've seen it, haven't you? She was mostly hostile. But sometimes when her sanity returned, she was afraid. Afraid of this man. How well do you even know him, child? I've known him for as long as I knew Catherine, Mother. He's a close friend. I didn't ask you how long you've known him, but how well. Beyond that, the face that he portrays in public view, do you even know his past? Do you even know any of his ambitions or secrets? He was always a private man, Mother. Think back, child. Isn't it curious how all his past relationships end in a disaster? Everything he touches crumbles. That is not enough to accuse him of anything. You idiot. He is different. He does not belong. You have felt it too, haven't you? Rosa looked at Guillaume with new eyes now. A touch of doubt snaked its way under her sadness. Rosa wanted something to blame, something to catch all her regrets. Guillem seemed like the perfect candidate, didn't he? Yes, you're finally seeing it. Open your eyes, child. It made sense. Guillem and Catherine's relationship began to pewter into coldness right before she died. He met her mental instability only served to compound the fracture in their relationship. She was violent in her last days. Perhaps Guillem was tired of her and had her killed off for convenience. Or maybe Catherine, in her psychotic state, killed herself to spite him. Rosa stared at the man beside her. He is not to be trusted, child. He is a demon. Guillem returned Rosa's angry stare with a resolute look. I know you must hate me, Rosa. I know I only aggravated Catherine's condition with my presence. I know the feeling when I'm not wanted. He stood up, a hard, kind look on his face. Just remember, I will always be here for you. As much as I was there for Catherine, even though she spat me out. Rosa bit her lip. When Catherine refused to eat, it was Guillem who fed her and attended to her. Despite Catherine hurling him abuse, he tried to care for the sick woman himself. Lies, all lies. Keep up appearances. Then, what is it that he has done, Mother? Catherine committed suicide. It was not by his hand that she expired. Are you going to let it go at that? Look at his face and tell me you trust him wholeheartedly. Rosa tried to search the answer in Guillem's eyes, but as always, his face only betrayed few emotions. I don't know. Mother was screaming now. He killed her. I'm sure he did. And you're letting him get away with it. Please, my head hurts. And you say you loved her. You never loved her, you selfish child. I've always known you were this selfish, just like your father. Stop. You throw people away. Didn't you throw me away when I inconvenienced you? Admit it. You were secretly relieved that I died. No, stop it. She screamed back at the last voice. Her mouth quivered. Guillem stared at Rosa in shock. The outburst came out accidentally. It opened the plug that kept the tears from pounding out her eyes. Now her vision was clouded, her eyes blinking them away again and again. She was not sobbing. She did not even realize her face was wet. Guillem and Rosa stared at each other, both kind of red in their sorrow. He knelt down by Rosa's bed and wiped her tears with his hand. He did not say anything while doing this, and Rosa stared blankly ahead. It almost stunned her how much tears a person's eyes can carry. I loved her too, Rosa. He said it after a while. I know what you're feeling. She didn't know if it was her own or her mother's anger it was somehow influencing her, but it just began to heave in fury. She balled up her fist so tight that her fingernails hurt. Shut up. She spat, and the man recoiled under the uncharacteristic bitterness of her words. Catherine was afraid of you in her last days. You did something to her, I know it. She could feel Mother inside her head, building up her anger. He has to be punished. You were to blame. He has to atone. I know you're guilty. Seek revenge. Guillem stared at her, dumbfounded for a few seconds. But the man didn't try to appease her. He only stepped closer and wrapped his arms around the hysterical girl. Let go of me. I hate you. Let me go. But Guillem didn't. If you need something to hate, then I'll accept your hate. But you must accept my comfort too. I need you too right now, Rosa. You're the only one who loved her as much as I did. Guillem's words brought back Catherine in Rosa's mind. Almost at once, the anger was replaced with sadness so heavy she couldn't breathe. Why was she so angry again? She was focusing on anger instead of pain. It was easier. The real tears came for all the loss of the girl they both loved. Tomorrow was not going to come. Right now. There was only right now, the loss, and two friends mourning a loved one. Rosa cried until she thought she wouldn't be able to stop, and Guillem quietly held her. When her weeping began to subside into sobs, he spoke then. Stay in the place, Rosa. I know you're thinking of leaving now that Catherine is gone, but I can't let you wander the streets again. I will take care of you. It's what Catherine would have wanted. Like a spell being broken, these words brought back her anger. How could you possibly know what Catherine wants? She pushed his arms away from her. She's dead. Guillem's mouth pursued as he stepped away. I want you to go. Please leave me. Guillem sighed and closed his eyes. I understand. He left without as much as a turn of the heel.
Oh, but I like him. Kind of. I don't know. I think,
Hours seemed like minutes to her. She would fall asleep and awaken in unfit intervals that she had lost the exact time. Awake, she would stare at the part of the wall with no thoughts forming in her head. One would think morning should be spent in depressive wait. Excuse me, someone came to see me. That. All the reasons to grieve are yours after all. She could wail now if she wanted. She could pull on her hair, curse the skies. She could reminisce the past, admire the frailty of human lives. Unfortunately, it was something less poetic. Pain was simple. It was clean. It was a well-sharpened knife that sliced through the heart in one stroke. No blood, no mess, empty. When tears are spent, there's just a hole where your heart had been. The hurt calls out to you, it lingers. But since there's nothing there anymore, you can't find where it starts and ends. Rosa slept all day. The sun had gone down twice before she shifted from her bed. She stood up slowly, deliberately, with a purpose. My child, you know I'm hurt when you're hurt. Already a surge of power flowed within her, fueled by her grief. Power filled her up, and there was so much emptiness inside that the energy seemed to saturate her whole body. Purpose was always a balm for grief. Mother, tell me what to do. Retribution. Start with his guilt. Start with his guilt, child. What is justice? To uncover his lies, crush his mask. He must face his sin. Rosa didn't speak, but she started to form the words in her mind, feeling them in her bones, giving life to every thought. She took a small knife and carved a symbol on the floor. It didn't need much. It's a guilt spell. It didn't aim to punish, it only aimed to inform. She needed to know how much guilt the man carried and the source of guilt. If the guilt was concrete and the same came for a direct action, then she would know Guillem did something to Catherine. It had been a while since she had used magic. It used to be the only way she could protect herself from the world. Mother taught her, and now Mother guided her as she casted her spell. She needed a possession of the man. Rosa upped his voice, still fresh from memory. She focused on the last conversation they shared. If you need something to hate, I will take care of you. I need you. His words made Rosa feel distressed and confusing. Always it was the way with him. The feeling wasn't foreign, it had been there for years. I will always be there for you. Rosa felt a violent force upon her stomach. It was that hard lurch just before vomiting. You failed. The spell collapsed on her brain. Focus, idiot child, or you'll lose your chance. Rosa tried again. This time she focused on Guillem's eyes. Cold, like flints of steel, dark and phantomless. No grief except perchance for the situation. No Catherine, no pain of loss. This didn't matter to her. Their relationship was dying anyway. Where was his guilt? Rosa dug deeper. She increased the chanting on her lip. No atonement, no uncertainty, no guilt. Did the spell fail again? She searched once more and found no guilt. There was no guilt in Guillem's eyes. She could stop the spell now, knowing he was innocent. If the spell worked, then Guillem was blameless. But The absence was more distressing. I guess it would be distressing if it's because he actually did kill her but don't feel any guilt about it. Oh well. Rosa desperately pushed her mind further, almost wishing there were traces of hiding beyond her reach. Guilt should be present in any loss, no matter how little. Don't we blame ourselves for our own loss? Don't we hate ourselves and punish ourselves even if it wasn't our fault? It didn't have to be real, but we need guilt to feel pain. But Guillaume didn't have a sliver of guilt. The vicious pain took hold of her again, squeezing her stomach with murderous intent. The pain was so great, Rosa wasn't sure if the spell had failed or succeeded. Something is wrong. Before Rosa could agree with Mother, she felt a sharp pain in her throat. Rosa clutched her neck, scraping, scratching. A sharp, jagged lump was blocking her breathing. She could feel its edges curl up her windpipe, tearing the soft walls as it moved about. The pain did not stop. Rosa fell to her knees and gagged. Huge drips of blood-spotted spit ran down her chin. She thrashed about like a woman being strangled. Mother remained calm, unaffected by Rosa's distress. Rosa was about to expel whatever it was. Tears ran down her eyes. A horrible, acidic taste coated her tongue. Finally, she opened up her mouth and forced out the vile thing. She kept her eyes shut, afraid to look at whatever came out of her. But the similar feeling gripping her, she puked again. The liquid down her mouth thickened and congealed. It wasn't spit anymore, but blood. It had gathered around her knees in a glowing pool. Rosa panted. Every breath was laced with pain. She wiped the sweat off her forehead. The gruesome effect had finally stopped. Something on the floor reflected light. She struggled to comprehend what was in front of her. She reached out her hand to pick up something sharp that made her recoil. She tried again, this time seeing it more clearly. Rosa picked them up, shaking hands. Needles. In her palms were a handful of metal needles. She had rigged them along with blood and jagged pieces of flesh. Oh, that's nice. Rosa examined them with a horrified kind of curiosity. She stuck one in her thumb and it drew more blood. They were real. They had materialized in her throat while casting a spell for Guillaume. Rosa wiped her mouth. There was something wrong with him. Something potent and dark. Or could it be that she felt horribly in the spell? She pushed her limits this time. She went too far. But still, a tug and concern was forming. It was as real as the metal needles in her hand. Rosa tried to stand on her feet, but she was exhausted. Her knees failed her, and she crumbled on the floor like a rag. How are you? Are you all quite all right, my darling? Now you see, there's a sinister force at work. Rosa stared at the needles in her hand. Who are you really, Guillaume? Oh, portraits candlelit. Rosa entered the room with a tray of pastries and a pot of tea. Kath, do you want some tea? The girl didn't look her way. She continued to churn out the bitter, melancholy sound from her piano. Rosa sighed, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She placed down the food on the table. She sat on the stool beside the piano, twiddling her thumbs while her friend continued to stew in her foul mood. Is that a new composition? It sounds nice. You're making a new piece every day nowadays. It's a shame they're all so sad. Catherine didn't reply, but when she spoke again, her words were bitter. I saw them again, those denigrate louts. No shame at all. Kath. I mean, sure, okay, condescending bloody adults and all that. At least have the decency to close the door. And you know what? It's almost as if they wanted to get caught. When I walked in on them this morning, eating each other's faces, they had this look on them, like they were daring me to say something. Be a dear and put them back on the table, Catherine, he even said. Like I'm this soft-headed piss-pot of a mate. He wanted me to get annoyed, I just know it. Well, whoopie-doo, I am. Catherine turned to the tea and pastries, stuffing the buttered bread into her mouth. Easy there. These bloody things. These bloody delicious things. She said the last part angrily as she blamed her troubles on the food's relish. Rosa giggled in spite of herself. Catherine wiped her mouth in mock anger. Why are you laughing? What are you laughing at, wench? It's almost comical to watch you eat when you're angry, calf. You're like the giant monsters that attack defenseless town of Horitans. Oh yeah? Catherine made sad, tiny squeals and picked up another piece of bread. No, no, spare us! She adjusted her voice and boomed out a roar. The Cathrian monster of the deep doesn't show mercy to anyone. She dropped it in her mouth and chewed savagely. Yum! Annihilation is delicious with tea. The two girls giggled. Catherine's rare smile turned into a rueful laugh. As soon as Rosa felt her move turning somber again. What happened anyway? Aren't you annoyed by it too? Sister has changed ever since she started working in the shed too. Now it's all killing me this, killing me that. If she wasn't already married, as if she wasn't already married. Ugh. She doesn't even care that people are talking behind her back. She barely sees us at home anymore. Father misses her a lot. He always asks about her. He's sick and all she cares about is that dastardly Maquis. Rosa shrugged. I am a little bit annoyed, but I guess I've gotten used to it. Their lives of their own, calf. She doesn't dare divulge further than that to Catherine, but it was partly truth. I like Guillaume. He's a good guy, but I love my sister. If they want to get married, then just fix stuff and let them have at it. What irritates me is that my damn snatch is the way they are with each other. Catherine recently found out the use of expletives endearing in her speech. Rosa hoped it was a phase. They're bloody miserable. Anybody with half a brain can see that. Yes. I've told Amelia time and again to smarten up. She's hurting a lot of people, including herself. But as if she would listen to her 16-year-old brat of a sister, right? Even Guillaume is depressed, I can tell. Remember when he used to come visit us and have tea? Or when we used to have picnics in the afternoon? We used to run around chasing rodents in the garden. You ran around. We just watched you get dirty, actually. That is very true, you knitheads. But even then, it used to be fun visiting the chateau. Nowadays, we barely even see him. He just stays in his bureau all day brooding. Is it something adult subjects tells themselves to, like a torture ritual or what? I don't understand how two people are clearly keep at it. Rosa did understand. At least, some part of her did. She couldn't exactly explain how pain and love worked. All she knew is that it had something to do with an obsessive amount of hope. She felt Mother tugging in her mind. She loves Mother so much. Living with the Preeetts gave her an ample of comparison of her life. She finally accepted that Mother was cruel. And yet Mother still gives her love and keeps her from wanting. Is that crazy? Perhaps it's the only love that she needs. Perhaps it's what she deserves. Rosa shook the thoughts off her mind and just shrugged. They'll figure it out, calf. Humans learn. Oh, look at you, all profound and shit. You read any good books, lady? Just a reverting account of the ugly duckling and Baa Black Sheep. Ah, the classics. I don't know how you put up with it, though. I hate reading words. I have to learn to read and write. I want to write. Why would you want to do a dastardly thing like write? Why would you want to hit some crazy strings until your fingers bleed? The two things laughed again. The friends, not things. I want to remember things. I want to write them down. But most of all, I want to feel the way you do when you play the piano, calf.
Oh?
The way you look when you play, your passion and bliss in musical form. It feels like love, like magic. You inspire me to do something fulfilling and grand.
Well, I'm sure you will.
Hey, why not write a play one day? Oh,
Let's do it. You write an amazing play, and I shall provide the music. We'll travel around the country and perform. We'll make lots of money and gain lots of followers. We'll be known as the Parade Parade, Caravan of Wonders.
Parade Parade.
Are you sure? Puns are the best, trust me.
That sounds darn dippy-skippy.
How dare you mock me?
The sound of a knock interrupted their daydreams.
Catherine, it's me. I need to discuss something important with you.
Catherine's lips sprouted with frustration at the sound of her sister's voice. She turned back to the piano and began to pound a sarcastically happy tune. Rosa stood up to open the door. Hello, Rosa. Madame. She had seen the older Parade sister recently, a little of the older sister recently, and it astonished her how old she had begun to look. Her once radiant face looked harrowed and almost crone-like. Her eyes hung huge bags. And yet, she still looked quite dignified, full of pride and round. There was extra rouge on her skin, and her demeanor was elegant. It's as if pride was her only food these days. Do you mind giving Catherine and me a moment of privacy? Rosa gave a small bow. Of course not, madam. Rosa gathered her nursery books and squeezed Catherine's shoulders before stepping out. Rosa entered the quiet room of the library. She was about to approach the table when she noticed Guillaume already occupying the seat. He was writing something in a book, somewhat immersed in the activity. Rosa stopped in her tracks. Why are you so nervous anyway? Just ignore him. He doesn't seem to notice you. Unfortunately, Guillaume lifted his head and saw her by the door. Oh, hello, Rosa. Rosa took a step back. Maybe it was best to walk away, as if this was a mistake. But wouldn't that be rude? He had seen her already, after all. But she had never been alone with him. It was just too awkward. Well, why not just go in? It's going to be fine. They have conversed normally before. But that was because Catherine was around to disperse her awkwardness. Now I look like an idiot. Guillaume watched her pace in front of the door in amusement. Rosa stumped in, if not for the awkward dance of indecision she subjected herself to. She took a seat at the farthest corner of the table and opened her book. Oh no, he's actually standing up and walking over to her. Oh no, horrible man, just sit over there while I sit over here. But Guillaume was already beside her, peeking at what she was reading. A cold sweat spread on her scalp. Rosa, that book. Rosa began to chatter nervously. I know it's a children's book, sire. I'm teaching myself to read. I know most commoners don't bother, but I want to learn. So please don't laugh or mock me. Guillaume pointed at the book. It's upside down. Rosa stared at it. The ducks on the picture had their feet up in the air. She couldn't think of anything more embarrassing. I'm sorry. Guillaume's face lost its cheer. What do you need forgiveness for? Rosa looked up at Guillaume. His eyes lacked the good-natured glint they usually had. It was such a subtle change, something felt rather absurd. She thought he would reprimand her further. His face certainly looked it. Instead, he sat down beside Rosa, drumming his elegant fingers on his cheek while he watched her wordlessly. Well, weren't you going to read? What was wrong with him today? He didn't seem like himself. Had he eaten something bad? The aura he exuded was not his usual friendly warmth. Yet it wasn't particularly wicked. The look on his face just read slightly and eternally ticked off. Rosa turned the book upright and read the words out loud. That U is with a short sound. It's pronounced like this. Guillaume made a sound, his face still in a lazy stare. Rosa nodded and continued. Her nerves were frazzled, but she was actually at ease with his presence. She felt like a child being taught by their parent. The parent is strict, but still caring. And the child is jumpy but eager to learn and please. I'm sorry for not commenting much, but I'm just really intrigued in this story. Most of all, he will not hurt her from her mistakes. Rosa was almost sure. They lived, that's past tense of live. Why do we change it? It's rule of the grammar. Grammar? Guillaume narrowed his eyes at her. Do you even know your alphabet? Rosa shook her head. You should start there. Guillaume rose from his chair and appeared among the shelves. He left behind an old, thick book covered in green. This was what he was writing on earlier. It looked tattered and worn. The pages laid flat on the side of the book didn't close properly. Rosa reached out to peek when, "You are not to touch that." Rosa's body froze at the sound of Guillaume's warning. Guillaume's stare followed her even as she whispered numerous apologies under her breath. I'm sorry. Guillaume just rolled his eyes. You're always seeking forgiveness for everything. Am I? I'm so... Guillaume moved his hands to her face, his fingers resting on her chin. He lifted up her face until it seemed like their noses would touch. Rosa felt her heart thump loudly inside of her body. Please don't. Not you too. She felt his breath on her face. Her heart sank into despair. Her mother's voice resounded in her head. In the end, they're all the same. He's like everyone else. He shut her eyes and prepared herself for the worst like she always did when... Then she felt her head being turned from side to side. She opened her eyes to see Guillaume studying her face like a textbook. You're a fairly attractive girl. Why do you carry yourself as if it's a slight? He lifted the hair that hid her damaged eye. Rosa's mouth clenched. Is it because you were hurt before? He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was stating the sky is blue. Rosa recoiled from his touch. No, I did that to myself. I wasn't talking about your eye. He placed a stack of books on the table, one which was a thin pamphlet filled with letters. There were letters on the book that instructed the users to trace letters with their quill. Rosa wanted to focus on it, but she could feel the truth in Macrit's words stinging her. It's the way you went limp when I touched you. Next time I advise you to fight back. If you don't want to be touched, then you don't have to be. Do you understand this? But I am weak. Says who? His eyes were humorless. The world cares not for people who think themselves as victims, Rosa. If you need power, then be powerful. To have it, it is necessary to crush things along the way. Rosa flinched under the weight of his stare. She realized that the polite and courteous Guillaume was all but a facet. It was still him, but it was nothing but an oil portrait, an artwork of his devising. Cynific, aloof, and irrelevant, it couldn't capture his essence in a few human strokes. Suddenly, Rosa realized he was powerful. Who are you? She almost caught herself to say. You're not Guillaume, and yet he spoke to her like he knew what it was like to hurt and to fear. If you don't start acting like you own yourself, then people will not hesitate to take everything. He laid out some of the books he brought out. One activity book was an activity book for children. It had a picture of a child holding an apple with an arrow stuck to it. Another was a book of limerick. The other two were figure books that intimidated her. She would come to know them as Hamlet and Paradise Lost. But the one that caught her eye was the ornately designed book with a red jacket and cold, intricate trimmings lining the corners. Myths and fables from around the world. This would be her favorite book, her treasure, and she knew it like love at first sight. These books are yours. Take them with you. Read the thin ones first, and then gradually build your vocabulary with the thicker ones. Rosa ran her hands over the skin of the red book. She opened the cover gingerly, as if carefully unwrapping a present. Thank you. No thanks is needed. I simply showed you some books from a portion of the library you were unaware of. You're still so generous, even if you are like this. Like what? That. What? I'm slightly pissed off. Guillaume didn't reply, leaving an awkward silence lingering between them. Then he gave a giant laugh that made Rosa jump out of her skin. I do look bloody pissed off, don't I? Why? Is it because of Amelia? Guillaume's eyes drifted away. No. I've always just been. You just pointed it out. You're not usually like this, especially with Catherine and the townspeople. I find it easy to adapt to people, especially to the ones I like. Guillaume looked at Rosa as if he had just become aware of her presence. Makes me wonder why I'm so stern with you. I'm sorry. Rosa shook her head. I somehow prefer this side of you. Guillaume cocked his head to the side. He brought out the green book that Rosa noticed earlier. This is called a journal. When you learn to write, start one. Sorry, need to move the chair bit. What is it? Something you can use to remember yourself when you've forgotten. Does it work? It used to. Nowadays, not anymore. Oh, the act itself is the only thing I remember. Now, let's start with your vowels. A scream pierced the halls of Chateau. It was Catherine. Guillaume sprinted to the door with Rosa not far behind. Back in the piano room, Catherine took a shaky step towards her sister. She wasn't moving at all. Blood dotted the even piano keys. I didn't. It was an accident. Amelia. She was overcome with the urge to approach her sister and shake her awake. Make sure she's okay, but it was a nasty fall. Amelia! Catherine saw the way her sister's head snapped back as it collided with the sharp corner of the piano. She watched as if it was a series of photographs in her head. She had to check on her. But Catherine retreated into a corner instead. She didn't even notice her legs move until her forehead touched the wall. She didn't want to turn around. Her sister was on the floor. Her eyes were still open, unblinking. It was an accident. It was nothing but an accident. Was it? She pushed first. She got really scary. She strangled me. What? That's absurd. Are you sure? Why would she do that? I don't know. I think she did. Catherine touched her aching throat. That Peril girl, Amelia, is it? She really believes just because the Macris took her in that he's interested in her? Well, she's obsessed with the master. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Wasn't her mother a bit, not right in the head? It probably runs in the family. Amelia did look mad. Her eyes burned with malice for her as she pushed her fingers on Catherine's neck. But she couldn't remember if that really happened. Sister was always kind to her. She would never ever hurt her, even if they got into a fight. Sister loved her. Am I turning mad? I have the blood of a mad woman. Am I gonna end up like her? I only told her the truth. Guillaume doesn't care for her, and she doesn't even care for him that much either. It was just all chaff, their relationship. No sense trying to make everyone miserable too. But she called me jealous, and that. She has never called me that. She said they decided to send me away. My lessons sent home, my piano replaced. It was for my own good, she said. I don't have to travel here all the time. I can concentrate on my other endeavors. I can make new friends. But I know she just doesn't want me near the chateau of Guillaume. She hates it when I catch her with him. Perhaps this morning was the last straw. She hates it, but she also smirks at me when I see him, like she basks in it. I think I might hate her. Catherine's thoughts ran through her head like a storm. They poured out of her aimlessly. I wonder if the piano is broken. Am I gonna pay for it? What will become of us without sister's wages? What of father's medicine? What of my dreams? Sister can't be dead. Sister can't be dead. Catherine brought her fingers to her lips and nibbled on her thumb. She didn't notice this. Her mind was preoccupied. She was in the corner of the wall, biting her fingers. It was a tiny comfort in the rapidly collapsing world. Guillaume opened the door and found Amelia lying on the floor. An ugly gash broke the skin of her forehead. Facing the wall was Catherine, shivering like a leaf and viciously devouring one of her fingernails. He approached her cautiously. Catherine. Rosa was out of breath, but was still able to let out a gasp at the scene. Amelia's lifeless eyes stared up at nothing, and here was Guillaume trying to console Catherine. Rosa, will you call for help, please? I see that someone checks on Amelia. Rosa did as she was told, but what she really wanted to do was hug Catherine herself. Guillaume took a small step towards her. He called out her name slowly, coaxingly. Catherine turned her head, her thumb still in her mouth. The flesh was torn, and a smudge of scarlet painted her teeth. It was an accident, I swear. Of course it was, Catherine, of course it was. She pushed me first. She wanted to send me away. She wanted me gone. You can tell me about it later. Let me take you away from this room. What have I done? Catherine fell to her knees and wept. Large sobs filtered the air out of her. She felt like drowning, trying to keep herself afloat in between sobs. Every exhale was a squeezing pain in her lungs. She felt Guillaume's arms wrap around her. What have I done? What have I done? You didn't do anything, mon chéri. This is not your fault. There was a bitter bulge building up in her throat, and she felt no amount of crying would push it away. What am I gonna do? Fathers, sister, I'm so scared. Guillaume's arms wound tighter around her, and she clutched onto his warmth in a sea of fear. You don't have to be. I will always be by your side. Catherine, I will take care of you and your father, all right? You don't have to worry about your future. Her tears soaked his shirt through, but the squeezing in her chest felt less painful. Why do you do this? Why do you care so much for me? Guillaume's eyes furrowed, as if confused that she even asked. I just do. It was a boldly stated fact, as if painfully obvious, and that Catherine was a nit for not getting it. It made Catherine's heart expand in her ribs. When she looked back, she might recall the moment she fell in love with her, the look on his eyes that was reassuring and strong. She wasn't alone. She was going to be all right. Let's get you away from here. He supported her arms and stood her up, carefully to block the view of her sister from her eyes. Oh God, what was it? He led her to the door. Catherine hated how fast her relief came. She was drenched in sorrow at her sister's death. Her father would not take the news well, especially in his health. But she was all right, and she hated it. Rosa was with her. She didn't have to leave her piano, her dreams. Him. Nothing had to change. And most importantly, she hated the voice that came whispering in her head over and over again. Thank goodness she's dead. Thank goodness. The first candle is lit. This candle is storage. The love for familiars. The cleanest love. Rosa stared at the blue candle glowing in her hand as she chanted her spell. Trust is the veil that conceals and deceives. Trick his eyes and his heart with the warmth from this candle's flame. A bond of blood like the kin will be forged. Weave this trust so his tongue will yield to what is sought. I had to end the episode here. I'll see you in the next one. Wow, this game's dark. Holy, oh my god. Alright, I'll see you in the next episode. Wow,